Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, hey, hey. You heard about Marvin Gaye? We got him. Can I get a witness? Talking about Hitler, USA. We got it. How sweet it is. We got those fine, fine super supremes. The kind of girls you see in your dreams. We're waiting to hear a thunderous sound. You know it comes from Detroit town. Talking about Rosa Parks. We said her. Talking about Henry Ford, the inventor. Talking about Aretha, yeah. We got her. Queen of soul. You know about Seeger, yeah. We got him. In that old time rock and roll. Slim Shady set the world on fire. The big three, baby, and the finest cars. And George Clinton's Pete Funk all stars. We spend our days on the line and our nights in the bars.
Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Detroit, Michigan. 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 Detroit, Michigan.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight, we go through some more history of Detroit, Michigan from 1826 to 1860. Things are going to start to, like, the gaps are going to get lower because obviously newer histories, there's more information, more stuff out about. I was wildly disappointed this week because some of the stuff there wasn't a whole hell of a lot of information on. And other stuff I found out for the first time, which is in part why I did this series because yeah, there's some stuff that I've been finding out, so that's cool. There will not be an ICP episode. Fuck ICP and their wrecking of my pure gold juice Fago. I know it's been like 10 minutes. It's not my fault. NASA is, God, they're dinosaurs, and that was their call. Yeah, the Ren Center. The Top Spins. There used to be a restaurant in there. It used to be a really nice restaurant. And then when General Motors moved out, they kind of moved out too. A second Eminem's hometown. It's Mighty Meat's hometown too. So, welcome to Detroit City. What's up, Alex? And hey, Linda. So, what's in store for tonight? We're going to talk a little bit about the Underground Railroad and Detroit's impact in that. We'll also learn some other random facts and get into some really cool stuff about mining, beer, all kinds of stuff like that. So, yeah, screw ICP. That's why I said the other Eminem, Mighty Meat, is much better, and also from Detroit, Michigan. So, and of course, Kid Rock with the intro, you know, he's from Detroit too. So, but hey, Fast, what's up, buddy? But without further ado, let's get right into it. So 1826, the U.S. removes troops from Fort Shelby. plans to demolish the fort are laid, and the government donates land to the city of Detroit. So this is the second of three forts. We had Fort Pontchartrain, then we had Fort Shelby, and we'll have another fort coming up that, like I said, I didn't know anything about. That's still standing. So I've reached out to Fort Wayne, as it's called, the Preservation Society, and I'll try and do a live from there or do some kind of interview or something because I'm intrigued. I didn't know it was there. Honest. Then we go forward to 1827. We've talked about Wayne County previously engulfing most of Wisconsin, or most of the coast of Wisconsin, the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, some of Indiana, some of Ohio, and the new Wayne County is starting to. Now it looks much like it is today. Wayne County is the county in which Detroit resides. Wayne County is divided into townships. So there's Brownstown, which is still there. Buckland, which broke up into smaller. I've never heard of Buckland. But I believe that's one of the ones that broke into smaller areas. Detroit, Ecorse, which is still there. Hamtramck, which is still there. Huron, Manguan, Plymouth, and Springwells. So a lot of those still exist. A lot of them kind of broke up and became smaller cities. But this is pretty much Southeast Michigan as it looks today. And that's Wayne County now. To the left, you would have Washtenaw County. To the north, you would have Oakland County. So that's kind of, if you're looking at election results or something like that, this is the Wayne County. This is Detroit. And there's several cities around there now. So Hamtramck is surprisingly nice. It's mostly white, and there's a lot of Polish in Hamtramck. And it's on the north side. I was just in Hamtramck the other day. Beautiful city. When you get into the north and the east of the city of Detroit, it's surprisingly nice. You have Grosse Pointe, Grosse Ile. That's where you have the places. I can't think of the other town, but you have the places like Royal Oak, that kind of stuff, where Royal Oak is all hippies, but like rich hippies. They're really nice areas. That's where all the when you get into the north and the east, that's where you get all the athletes. They live up in that region, that kind of thing. So there are nice areas of Detroit, of Southeast Michigan. There's always this, if you're from Detroit is a very small city in the middle. If you're not from Detroit, Detroit is basically everything south of Flint and east of Ann Arbor, which is not true, but yeah, that's how people see it. It's this big area. But anyways, in 1827, Detroit adopts its city seal and motto. Spesseris Milora Resurgent Ceneberus. I don't speak whatever the hell that language is. It means we hope for better days. It shall rise from the ashes, which I think is a hella fitting motto for the city of Detroit. It commemorates the fire of 1805. So we covered that last week. There was a great fire by the gentleman that was smoking a pipe in his barn, blah, 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 burnt down the city. And some could say that they might have doomed the city from the start, but we hope for better days. It shall rise from the ashes is the motto of the great city of Detroit. So 1828, we start seeing some of the neighborhoods form. And the population pick up a little bit around this time. Detroit's population is 1,517. Then we jump forward to 1830. The next time they kind of took numbers. Detroit's population was 2,222. Michigan's population is 31,639. So still relatively small, but growing, and we'll see growth with the boom, with the industrial boom, with a lot of things going on. In 1830 as well, Irish immigration to Detroit begins. So they settle west of Woodward in a neighborhood they call Corktown. Corktown is still there. Corktown's a nice area. They have some good food, stuff like that. Again, it's there's a little bit of cash in that area still. And with the revitalization of Detroit and the rebuilding of Detroit, it's really become a nice place to live. So, but Corktown is Detroit's oldest neighborhood, established in 1934, officially. 1834, excuse me. And then we start seeing the media start moving to Detroit. So in 1831, on May 5th, today's Detroit Free Press begins publishing as the Michigan Intelligencer and the Democratic Free Press. Detroit Free Press, I think it's changed hands of owners several times since that time. However, they are still the Detroit Free Press. Around here, they're called FREEP, F-R-E-E-P, or FREEP for short. But yeah, it's the Detroit Free Press, and I think their website is actually FREEP if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's www.freep.com, Detroit Free Press. And it has a picture of Jared Goff, and we won't get into that right now because I don't want to relive that. But yeah, it is still operational. It is still the Detroit Free Press. 1831 mail service between Detroit and the East Coast begins. So they're finally being recognized. There's finally services. Oh, sorry, my dad's texting me. We're starting to see services. We're starting to see civil services, stuff like that. That are really making Detroit a real city. And then, of course, because we can't have nice things and shit always has to go bad. Cholera. So there were 2 cholera outbreaks. Cholera epidemic devastates Detroit. Father Gabriel Richard, who we talked about a couple weeks ago, cares for the stricken before he, too, dies from the disease. And then in 1834, just a short 2 years later, a second cholera epidemic kills 600 Detroiters, nearly an eighth of the city's population. And this was a published thing. Notice preventatives of cholera: be temperate in eating and drinking, avoid raw vegetables and unripe fruit, abstain from cold water when heated, and above all, ardent spirits, and if habit have rendered them indispensable, take much less than usual. Again, that's not medical advice. We don't give medical advice on this channel, but cholera was a huge issue to early Detroit. So we've already had the fire. We've already had mass evacuation once. Now we have 2 cholera outbreaks in 2 years. And sandwiched right in between those 2 events. Exactly. Right in between those, Detroit has its first race riot. It's officially in the record books, in the history books, as a race riot. 1833, June 14th and 15th, Detroit's first race riot occurs after black citizens help the Blackburns, a fugitive slave couple, escape to Canada. The event starts the anti-slavery movement in Detroit. And we'll get into a lot more about the race riots and Underground Railroad and stuff like that as we kind of move along here. But yeah, race was a problem even in the early city. So exactly, and it was all from helping uh, freed people get out of the United States because we were kind of going through some shit at the time, and we weren't terribly free. although, although we were supposed to be that way from the start. Um, so just an interesting foreshadowing for what the city may indeed become, or did indeed become. So City Hall, this is 1835, November 18th. Detroit's first city hall is completed. Again, we have the same kind of architecture that we saw with the church. That big, uh, kind of Romanesque sandstone construction, and this is what it looked like. It just beautiful buildings in the city, and a lot of them still exist. A lot of them are still there. But as you can see, it's just a massive building. It's a beautiful building. Um, yeah, I'm typing. So that's District Detroit. It's on Woodward. Um, and they say it's a Renaissance revival. This one is demolished. So this one was demolished. And it was demolished in 1961. So, and that was an interesting and different time for the city as well. So, but again, big, beautiful buildings. So Michigan went kind of back and forth with their statehood and their territorial, and uh, nobody was really hell bent on giving a statehood for whatever reason. But in 1835, Michigan's territory population reaches 85,000 people, which qualifies it for statehood based on what was there. Leading territorial officials develop a state constitution and elect Stephen T. Mason as first governor. However, the United States Congress refuses to grant statehood to Michigan until 1837. Dallas just scored on Philly. I don't. Okay. Have fun. Um, I was hoping the Lions could be up there, but they're not going to be. And so, what does that bring us into? So, you've always heard my disdain for Ohio, and we do hate Ohio. Like, don't get it twisted. We do. But there's good reason why we hate Ohio. And this is why. Led by Michigan's feisty 22-year-old territorial governor Stephen T. Mason, a small 250-person group of volunteers moved toward Toledo to defend their territory from an Ohio takeover. That's basically what they said. We eventually got there, but it took a minute. Um, and we're going to read a little bit about this from Michigan.gov. So the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 established an east-west line drawn from the southern tip of Lake Michigan across the base of the peninsula. Originally, the line was drawn using maps that showed the line intersecting Lake Erie north of the Maumee River. This is the territorial line of scrimmage that Ohioans recognized with their constitution that was drafted in 1803. When the Michigan Territory was created in 1805, surveyors realized that the tip of Lake Michigan was actually further south, and it included the area that would later become Toledo. This is important for a couple. That's true. Cleveland is much worse. Much worse. So the entire thing was when Ohio had the foresight to say, when they wrote their constitution, that any further surveys done to the region would not be valid. So what was placed in their constitution and what was the original line for their territory was to be the line, and there was not going to be any any movement on that line. That was it. That's what it was going to be. Obviously, when Michigan came along, they said, "Nah, I don't think so." And a lot of this was interesting because the Erie Canal had been completed. Toledo was on a massive waterway. It was a huge industrial city. It was a huge port and a huge economic opportunity. So it was worth it for the creation of both states to take what is now a pretty terrible city in Toledo. Looking at it now, you're like, why would you fight for Toledo? But at the time, the economic opportunity was so great that it was really important for us to secure Toledo. The revelation had Ohioans in Congress screaming off sides. They immediately campaigned to have the northern line accepted as the official border. In 1817, U.S. Surveyor General and former Ohio Governor Edward Tiffin sent William Harris out to survey the line according to Ohio's Constitution. The Michigan Territorial Governor Lewis Cass went to President James Monroe to protest the call. John A. Fulton was called into the fray to make another survey of the disputed claim in accordance with the Northwest Ordinance. This was relatively. I mean, we're talking about early 1800s. So the United States had only been a country for less than 50 years. We had just been through a ton of war. We had been through a ton of conflict, and we've been through a ton of situation where this could have had the possibility to rip apart the entire American nation over a little strip of land between two states. We won the deal, but I've never heard it. It was not surprising that two surveys resulted in two lines 8 miles apart at Lake Erie and 5 miles apart at the Indiana border, with the total of 468 square miles in between. Although Ohio still claimed the Toledo Strip as its own, the squabbling momentarily ceased, and Michigan quietly assumed jurisdiction over the area. So we decided to stop fighting it because Ohio was kind of shady and had the surveyor in the ear of the current president at the time. And Michigan said, "Yeah, you know what, the hell with it. We're just gonna move in and it's ours. We're just gonna take it, even though somebody said it wouldn't." Looking back, they had to have known that it was gonna become something at some point, but the controversy heated up again when Michigan sought admission to the Union on December 11th, 1833. In spite of Michigan's presence in the Toledo Strip, Ohio congressmen successfully lobbied to block Michigan's acceptance as a state until it agreed to Ohio's version of the boundary. Massachusetts Representative and former President John Quincy Adams supported Michigan, saying, "Never in the course of my life have I known a controversy of which all the right so clearly on one side and all the power so overwhelmingly on the other." So you're saying that Ohio was corrupt and garbage, and Michigan was right. And that's all that matters, is that Michigan was right and Ohio was corrupt. Oh, hang on one second. Boys and girls. All right, thank you. So Ohio's position was so strong that the governor, Robert Lucas, refused to negotiate with Michigan over the issue. Michigan's territorial council countered by passing a resolution that would impose heavy fines on anyone other than Michigan or federal officers trying to exercise jurisdiction in the Toledo Strip. In any blatant act of defiance, Governor Lucas turned to the disputed region into a county named after himself and appointed a sheriff and a judge. Michigan's boy governor had enough. Stephen T. Mason mobilized troops and headed towards Ohio. The Toledo War had begun. The war involved more saber rattling and one-upsmanship than it did shooting and bloodletting. For instance, after the Ohio legislature voted to approve $300,000 military budget, Michigan upped the ante by approving one with $315,000. Michigan's militia did not end up arresting some Ohio officials capturing 9 surveyors and firing a few shots over the heads of others as they ran out of the area. But only Ohio inflicted any casualties when a Buckeye named Two Stickney stabbed a Michigan sheriff during a tavern brawl. So Ohio not only being wrong and not only not having claim to the land, killed a great Michigan sheriff by stabbing him. Terrible. When President Andrew Jackson stepped in, the war ended. Jackson removed Mason from office and the militia commander. General Joseph W. Brown disbanded his troops, but Congress still held Michigan statehood hostage until it agreed to Ohio's claims. The citizens of Michigan were set up a state government anyway and elected Stephen T. Mason as governor. Michigan eventually became the 26th state of the Union on the 26th of January, 1837, but its territory did not include the Toledo Strip. Instead, it gained title to the western 3/4 of the Upper Peninsula. As compensation, 9,000 square miles of the most valuable timber, iron, and copper in the United States. Like so many other battles that rage today, a game is decided by one play, but a series of plays. Poor officiating may have taken Michigan officially out of the campaign for the Toledo Strip, but in retrospect, it is obvious who won the war. This could be slightly biased as an article because it is from the state of Michigan, but that is a little look into why we hate Ohio. They tried to take our jabs, take our land, and we said, fuck that. We're not going to let that happen. We won. We got the Upper Peninsula, which is beautiful and which we'll learn about coming up here. But that is a little insight into the Great Toledo War and the reason why Michigan hates shady-ass Ohio. So after all that got squared away, and we started mending, based on the terribleness that brought on to us by Ohio. 1836, Detroit installs its first street signs. Most of the streets are wooden plank, but downtown streets are cobblestone. So we're starting to build streets and signs and really make it. I'm not a fan of panhandles, but so we're starting to build up, even though the automobile is still 100 years off or 50 years off at least. Pennsylvania hates Ohio, and New Jersey, we're not alone. We hate Ohio with a passion. So much to Ohio actually passed a law. If your car is from Michigan, they can give you a speeding ticket without having to radar your car. So if you go into Ohio across the border, and you have Michigan plates, they can give you a speeding ticket for the absolute hell of it. Like, they have to have no proof that you were speeding. And if you are speeding in Ohio, you are getting a ticket every single time, no matter what. So despite having, horse-drawn carriages at this time and the vehicle still being a little bit out, we started building streets and really doing that kind of stuff. That's very true. I dread ever having to. So if I'm going anywhere to the East Coast, I have to go through Ohio. If I have to go anywhere west, you have to go through Illinois because they go down so far. Indiana's not bad. Like, not my favorite, but they're not terrible. Not like Illinois or Ohio. But unfortunately, you have to drive through them. So, and then in 1836 as well, daily stagecoaches began running between Detroit and Chicago. So we're really starting to be, some kind of transportation hub. We're starting to run daily stagecoaches so you could go from the city of Detroit to the city of Chicago. And it really helps our economy in the long run. And then we get to 1836. And Michigan was kind of an instrumental part in the Underground Railroad, and that's where that was spurred on by some of the race riots. And I'm sure you guys have heard of the Underground Railroad, but we'll watch a couple videos after we get through these slides. So, 13 former slaves created the Second Baptist Church in Detroit. It was the first African American Baptist congregation, and it played a pivotal role in Detroit's Underground Railroad operations. And then 1837, April 26th, Detroit Anti-Slavery Society is created. That also plays a huge role in the Underground Railroad operations for the city of Detroit and for the newly formed nation. So we'll go over to click on For Detroit, and they did for Black History Month a little bit ago. They did like a short video on it.
Welcome back, everybody. It's 6:46, and we're celebrating Black History this month. It's called The Flight to Freedom, a tour that shows a storytelling reenactment of the original Underground Railroad passage.
That journey stretched for miles from the south to parts of the north, and right here in the Midwest, Detroit was a popular spot for slaves as they tried to escape to Canada.
Local 4's Larry Sproul shows you the involvement of one local church with the Underground Railroad.
We still, my friends and I, laugh about the times that when we went to the theater and we paid the same price, but we had to sit up in the balcony.
It's hard to imagine now, but Jacqueline McKinney tells me those were the hard facts during the civil rights movement. Everywhere you go, there were two different sections, one for blacks and one for whites.
I lived during that time.
McKinney and her group of friends often meet up during this time of the year to celebrate Black history. Now, the church is home to the Underground Railroad Living Museum, or the Flight to Freedom Tour. It's a storytelling reenactment of the original Underground Railroad passage that operated between 1840 and 1863. Detroit was a popular destination some will call the North Home. Others would escape to Canada. I went along on an experience that I honestly cannot describe.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bo, and I'm going to be you guys' conductor on this escape to freedom. We finna get ready to step through this door. This is the door of no return. Once we step through this door, there's no turning around.
Now, the tour started on the Oak Alley Plantation. Its purpose to show us what the slaves went through on the 2-year journey to escape from the south to the north.
Now, we got this played a little bit where y'all can see where you're going, right? Now, I want you guys to imagine doing this in pitch black darkness. Ain't none of you guys would have had none of them old fancy clothes on, and shoes would have been the last thing you had on your feet. Do anybody know what star that is right there? That's the one we gonna travel by.
The North Star directed them.
Now we gonna keep on traveling, y'all. We've been traveling for 5.5 months.
They often stopped at the homes of whom they call the Quakers. They are members of a historically Christian group of religious movements, formerly known as the Religious Society of Friends.
Somebody tell me what that sign say right there. How far you got to go to Detroit? You just got your first taste of freedom. Took you a year to get here, but you finally made it. Yeah, but every time I got my people this far to freedom, I just be needing them to do me one favor. I need everybody to say freedom! Freedom!
We all heard about the story or even read about the story of the slaves and the Underground Railroad. But to see it up close and personal, all I really can say is, wow. But we now know a little more about the story of the slaves and the Underground Railroad. Reporting in downtown.
So that's fucked up. Like, let's not even play. Like, that's anybody who had to escape and run away and hide in caves and crawl through the. I mean, it's just insane. It's. I mean, the modern day equivalent, I guess, probably pissed some people off is potentially Hamas with all their tunnels and shit like that. Like, we had the same thing back when we were a young nation or a nation trying to get our footing. not that I'm taking sides in either one, but I'm just equating it to something that's happening today. It's just insane to me that for being a skin color, you would have to hide and go someplace underground to escape, to be free, to be a free person. Underground Railroad, again, 1840. William Lambert helps to operate Detroit's Underground Railroad with Sir Joseph Ferguson, William Webb, and other abolitionists. Over 45,000 slaves, a city at the time of just over 2,000 people, pushed 45,000 slaves to Detroit on the way to freedom in Canada over a 30-year period. That's true. That's true. But just to the insanity of that, to get people across, like that was just, it's unbelievable. It's insane. So Nova Scotia's not a great place, but so we have one more kind of tour, different, just a slightly different video, but same thing, about a minute and a half. So yeah.
Steal away, steal away, steal away to Jesus.
In the unfinished basement of the historic First Congregational Church of Detroit, runaway slaves are walking into freedom.
This is from their competitor,
It is a part
Fox
of
2.
our history in this country.
Reverend Dr. Lottie Jones Hood and her congregation have created this tour. It's a living exhibit that takes you back to the 1850s in a church that was actually a part of the Underground Railroad.
I won't have to walk into freedom.
The tour guides runaways into a maze of slave huts and cabins with passageways and dirt floors as actors bring history to life.
How was the trip then?
It was safe. We was all right.
Oh, bless you.
Actually, what it is, it's a simulated tour of a trip to freedom and escape on the Underground Railroad that begins down in Louisiana and comes 1,000 miles all the way up here to Detroit and over the Detroit River and on to Canada, including our church, when that church was on 4th and Wayne Street, which is now Washington Boulevard. It is a movement in which European Americans and African Americans came together to right an injustice. But on a spiritual level, what it does is that it shows people working together.
Steal away to Jesus.
So there's yet another video. So it just, for it to be like, I don't know what that would be like, and I can't give any kind of credence to saying, yeah, I know what that's like. I mean, the natives went through Trail of Tears and stuff like that. I didn't, but for somebody to have to go through something that incredible just to go be free it's kind of shitty on the parts of many of us, but I mean, it's also kind of, it shows our human spirit. And now if we can't find a fucking iPhone charger, we lose our mind. But these people walk thousands of miles just to be free. Just to be free. Yeah. And anybody who who helped them, who saw that it wasn't something we should be doing. Yeah. Black folk only never done being slaves. No, there was other slaves. Irish, Chinese. We put Japanese in internment camps. We've been shitty to a lot of races, but yeah. We've done running around in Africa. We barely found ants and brought back whatever we caught mouse, snakes, bull. I almost said it. Fuck you, Bobby. That journey would have sucked ass, cross-continental hikes suck nowadays on established trails with modern equipment. That's what I'm saying. We are so much more comfortable in our lives now than crawling through a hole. We didn't. And I've told the story before. Reservation, you get your check, you get your rent paid for, and you drink, 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 and they're more slaves than anybody are now. For sure. In my opinion, I've been to res. I'm native. They use it more as a crutch, honestly. So lots of Irish. Yep. We put Japanese in internment camps because they kept helping the enemy. Ask Max Murrah. Yeah. I mean, that's true in part, but there were a lot of them that didn't probably deserve it. But 1838, they aren't even allowed to drink in some of our res in Canada. Wow. Ken here. 1838, the Detroit Pontiac Railway is complete. The first cars are horse-drawn. And also Detroit has a lot of history with a lot of the water, the transportation and stuff like that via water. In 1839, February 18th, the Detroit Boat Club, the oldest in the nation, is formed. So we started getting trains, we started getting boats, we started building streets. 1840, the United States Census reports that 9,192 live in Detroit and 212,267 live in Michigan. Wow. Damn. Yeah, they gamble. They supposedly get some of that back in check, but that goes a lot to, yeah, that's a whole different issue. So, reminded in our business, February 18th, 1842, Detroit organizes its first public school system. Detroit Public Schools, which notably is not good anymore, but was just fine back then. And then on the 4th of July, 1843, the British once again want that smoke. What's up, Len? Ongoing border problems with British and Canada led to the construction of Fort Wayne, but it was never attacked. This is the one that I had no idea existed. I did reach out to him. Hopefully somebody will get back with me. I would love to go just visit because I didn't know this was here, honestly. I truly did not know that Fort Wayne was still here. And it's on the southeast side. It's right on the Detroit River. I would love to go visit because it almost looks Spanish inspired, based on the points on the corners. I know a lot of the ones in been to the ones in like St. Augustine, the forts with the big corners and points, that kind of stuff. So, and then in 1840, how did you miss this tiny little fort? I guess I've just never put two and two together. I've never seen it. So, and I may have seen it, just not put it together. Good design, hard to approach. Yeah. Yep. So, but there was like a virtual tour. It wasn't great. It didn't go very far. Like it just went into this lower left-hand corner because I was gonna bring it up, but maybe I'll do a video or something. Go visit. So just use rocks. Wait, what's the extra? The point? In 1845, Detroit's population is 13,065 people. So we're picking up. All right, so this is kind of the focus of the show today. Remember in that trade we got with Ohio, who's garbage? That led to us discovering iron ore. And you're starting to see why Detroit became the automotive headquarters of the world. Iron ore mining begins in the Upper Peninsula. So you're getting a lot of people that move up there. You're starting to see. Yeah, exactly. And truly, that's what I thought. Have you ever been there, AP? I had no idea the damn thing existed. I'm not even gonna lie. Like I know where it is. Like I looked it up. I've probably driven by it on several occasions. I just didn't know it was there. But I'd like to go at some point. So, 1845, iron ore mining begins in the Upper Peninsula. So this is what led to the creation of a lot of our economy, and it led to shipping. It led to manufacturing, a lot of that kind of stuff. So, we're going to go into why Ohio sucks and they lost. And a really cool portion of the UP, which I've been thousands of times, never in it. Huh. I have no idea how the hell I missed it, but obviously I did. So, we're gonna play a couple videos intermittently.
Local 3 is back on the road for our community tour across the UP. Haley Schoengar is in Iron River this week and dug up the history behind this once major mining town.
Iron River, a town of about 5,000 situated in the southwestern part of the Upper Peninsula, made a name for itself through two major industries.
People mostly came to Iron County for the mining and logging. Those were the two primary economic drivers for our area here. And, that was kind of in like the early 1900s where settlers really started coming here from all over the world.
At one point, Iron County was home to around 50 active mines. And without the mines and the people inside, this town would not be what it is today.
But we really owe it to them, the fact that we're all still here. It was because of them that the economy got established here in Iron River and that it grew into the major thing that it became. And so we really owe a lot to those miners and the dangerous situations that they put themselves in, knowing that, they were making community for their children and their children's children.
Some extremely notable people have played a role in Iron River, past and present.
William Selden was kind of one of the original surveyors and early settlers here. And he, established a lot in this community here. We've also had quite a few famous people from the area. Lee LeBlanc is a wildlife artist, and he also worked for MGM and worked on the movie Ben-Hur and received lots of awards. So he was from Iron River. Eileen Fisher, who's a published author, she published more than 100 books in her lifetime and received tons of awards. She was from Iron River as well. Brandon Giovanelli, he was an artist. His home is here on our museum grounds, and he was a prolific artist and received quite a few awards.
Thanks to its rich logging history, and as of 2014, Iron River is officially the log cabin capital of all of Michigan.
There is a log cabin day in Michigan on the last Sunday in June, and so that's when we celebrate, our log cabin history and the pioneers that settled up here. And so the Iron County Historical Museum has more original log cabins, than any other site in Michigan.
From mining to log cabins to famous artists that once called Iron River home, the deep sense of community and pride is what keeps Iron River's roots durable and going on for generations to come. Reporting in Iron River.
All right, so that was Iron River. So there's a whole... Oh, hang on. I didn't bring it up. No, I think there's one. Hang on. I thought I brought up a map, but I'm not seeing where the hell it's at. All right. Oh, I'm just on the wrong spot. So I did have a map. So this is the Iron Trail. So basically, let's zoom out. So this is the UP. So this is southern Michigan or the Lower Peninsula. This is kind of where I hang out in this little general vicinity of an area here. That's where my place is. Iron River is right here. So you have this whole square. You have Iron River over to Marquette. You have Iron Mountain, which is down in here. And you have this entire square that is just nothing but iron mines. Incredibly rich in iron mines. So what they do is they put it on a train and they drive it all the way across all the way across the UP, all the way through Dick, which is actually a town. And then it comes up through Rudyard, up through Paradise, also a town. And then either gets on some boats or it goes, there's a couple different places it goes. There's some rail that goes through Canada. But this is kind of, so this is where it's collected and it goes through here. My place is on this route where it goes by train. There's a really cool thing. If you go to the tracks, there's the little iron pellets that are littered all over the tracks. And you can, with permission from the railroad, of course, go out onto the tracks and pick up some iron pellets from the iron mines. There's also some that goes up to Pelly Island, or no, it's not Pelly Island. It's shit. It's not Grand either. What's the island I'm thinking of? Is it Pelly? Like right here north of Marquette. AP, you know what I'm talking about. Help a brother out. Presque Isle. There you go. Presque Isle. There's a really cool loading dock, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. All the way through the Dick. Yeah. That's funny. What's up, OG? Billy the Kid. Yep. All right. So now, we're going to look at 2, maybe 3 more videos. So this one is Iron Mountain. They have mine tours and stuff like that. So it's kind of a cool. So this is kind of their promo video. I think that old guy's still there.
Okay, this is where they hit that football slate, so we have to walk from here. The type of dynamite we use was made of nitroglycerin. Nitroglycerin dynamite, you have to have a blasting cap to ignite it.
So that's, I don't know. I think it's pretty cool to do that kind of stuff. Also another area I wanted to showcase. So if we come up into this area, so this is Houghton Hancock. Northern Michigan University's up there. They're a mining college specifically. Then we'll get into the discovery of copper and copper mining at some point. So that's up in that area too. But so this is all just mining and logging, that kind of stuff. But I thought this video was really freaking cool. 1, because it involves trains. 2, because I think it's just really well done. So this is them loading up. This is present day, them loading up the rail cars on Presque Isle. Crystal Falls Mushroom Cave. I've never done that. That sounds cool. Copper Harbor's a cool place. It's so long of a drive. Holy hell. Takes forever. If my wife's still in the chat, she says we can never go back because it took forever. Forever. Even from our place, which is in the UP. But definitely worth a shot if you're ever in the UP. So anyways, this is them loading up a ship and our boat, something like that, with those iron ore pellets that I was talking about that you can find on the railroad tracks, from rail cars, from mining operations that are still going on. So series was the gentleman that originally did the video. He's got some cool stuff. If you're into trains, go give him a like.
Moored to the Ellis&I ore dock in Marquette's Upper Harbor, the Arthur M. Anderson is revealed by the rising sun on this crisp fall morning.
That thing is huge. Huge.
The Anderson is perhaps the most well-known ship currently sailing the Great Lakes, famed for her role in the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. She was the last ship to have radio and radar contact with the doomed ore carrier during that November gale in 1975. Today, the Anderson is owned by Canadian National's Great Lakes Fleet subsidiary and is thus a regular at those docks in Minnesota, rarely calling at the Ellis&I. However, she is here today to load iron ore chips, or fines as they are sometimes known, a low-grade product consisting of pellets dropped and then reclaimed along the railroad or which failed to meet size specifications at the mine during the pelletizing process. The roundness and size of typical iron ore pellets is not just handy for shipping purposes, but also for the blast furnace. The open space left between the spheres allows air to flow throughout the batch, decreasing the time and energy required to melt it all down, while allowing oxygen to pass through and carry away impurities. What's more, the mine carefully controls the chemistry of the pellets to ensure a consistent product, further reducing work at the mill. Thus, it is easy to see why out-of-spec pellets, either by size or by being picked off the railroad tracks, are considered less than ideal. Thankfully, there is still a market for this product, as this scene demonstrates. A couple of ships per year arrive to ferry the fines off to a mill which is willing to accept the ore for pennies on the dollar in comparison to the regular product. Typically, the ore will be used to make lower grade steels or simply require more time and energy to create a higher grade final product.
So cool.
For anybody who has witnessed the contemporary shiploading process at this dock before, it's easy to notice the odd procedure taking place here. All of the chutes are down at once, with the gates left partially open in order to drop the ore directly into the ship from the rail cars. This change in process is because the chips tend to leak out the bottom of the dock pockets, creating a huge mess on the dock below. As one might imagine, the dock workers are not fond of shoveling it all up, nor are the ship crew members, who have to walk all over it when it's time to let the lines go for departure. Add to that the nature of the fines to coagulate if it rains, and it usually makes more sense to dump the ore cars directly into the ship, as we see today, instead of loading up the dock, hoping it all flows out, and then shoveling up the mess later. So for the duration of loading, the chutes are left lowered and the gates open for a direct transfer from train to ship. It ends up taking about 2 to 3 times longer to load this way, on the order of 12 to 18 hours.
I'm gonna pause it just for a second because I lost chat, but choo choo. I do like trains. Well, I live in Southeast Michigan, but I have a cabin in middle of the UP. But it's God, it's so beautiful up there. Even hippies like trains. That I was trying to find a picture because I know I've taken a picture and I misplaced a freaking hard drive and it drives me insane. You can kind of see scale, but I was gonna put my beautiful hands in front of it. But so that's the size of a human. That's a person, and this thing is massive, like incredibly massive. How do they get the ore out? So it's gravity fed. So they just take the car and open the bottom of the train car, and it just falls out. And that's why you can find it on the tracks, because sometimes it will kind of fall through the cracks of the bottoms. They don't seal. So it's like going back in time 50, 75 years out of the boat. I don't know how they get it out of the boat, honestly. I don't know. I'm not sure. I can look at it. Let me look.
Later that afternoon, after several
Okay, I
more
found a
cuts of
video.
ore were dumped, the Anderson was set to depart, backing out of the dock slip and performing a turnaround to head for the open waters of Lake Superior, and ultimately the Arcelor Mill steel mill in Burns Harbor, Indiana.
So that's gonna be. So they're just gonna talk about it going. So we'll learn some more. So apparently they have a here. We'll just watch the Canadian shipping group thing.
The self-unloading ship comprises a series of holds that are separated by bulkheads. The holds typically have 2 series of openings, aligned on the port and starboard sides of the ship. The ship's holds use gravity feed to discharge the load through their base. The flow from each of the openings is controlled by actuation of a gate. Each of the gates is independently controlled with hydraulic actuators or cylinders. Material is simply pulled from below the hopper opening at a controlled rate. For larger lump material or poor-flowing cargoes, the operator simply increases the gate opening to allow larger lumps to pass or prevent stable arches from forming over the opening. The discharge rate is controlled by adjusting the belt speed. This is particularly attractive for applications demanding varied discharge rates with poor-flowing cargoes. The operator can stop and restart the belt with the gate open. Material flowing onto the tunnel
I
conveyors
didn't have
makes
any
its way
idea.
to the stern of the vessel. A smaller pair of transfer conveyors directs the flow to the center of the ship. One of the most important and innovative parts of the self-unloading system is the C-loop elevator. The C-loop elevator consists of inner and outer belt loops. The speed of the belts is synchronized so material entering at the bottom is sandwiched between them and carried to the deck level. The belt separation is exaggerated here for clarity. The material leaves the C-loop elevator and drops onto the boom conveyor.
Huh.
The boom conveyor is typically capable of luffing through an angle of 18 degrees.
Okay. So yeah. So we have answers to our questions here. I truly didn't know either. I don't know. So but moving on. So we're gonna learn a little bit more about that specific area of Michigan that again is instrumental in the development of the industry in Detroit, and we're going to go through what it's like to live in northern Michigan. You should try. You should try like hell. Yeah. Yeah, I had no idea, truly. But so we're gonna go through life in northern Michigan. It's I know that up north it's gorgeous, but you wouldn't catch me up there in the winter. Even today. So we're not gonna watch all of this in the sake of time, but maybe. I don't know. We'll see how far we get. What's up, A.O. Alexander? So this is kind of just a snapshot. This was done by a local news source, and this is kind of a snapshot of life in northern Michigan. So
For Detroiters, the last days of December mean winter. Darkness after work, paralyzing wind off the river, the stop-and-go, slip-and-slide of freeway driving.
Hell yeah, it
In
does.
the Motor City and its suburbs, winter is a hassle, a struggle with snow and cold and ice. There's no place more dismal than the big city caught in a big freeze. On the doorstep of the new year, then, come with me to the North Country, to a place where they measure snow in feet, not inches, to a small town in the Upper Peninsula in winter. For some, it's the most beautiful land in America, a vision of big timber and burbling brooks. Just about everyone
100%.
in Michigan, every once in a while, dreams about a place in the Upper Peninsula.
Okay, so AP, we live, or our cabin, like I said, is Engadine area. So like Nobbin Way, Engadine area. It took us an entire day to travel from the bridge to Engadine because the roads were just impassable. They don't plow shit. They just put up sticks and hope that you stay on the road. It took us nearly an entire day. Thanks, Comer. Comer gifted a Mighty Meat membership. Thank you, sir. It is incredibly difficult at times because they get a ton of snow because they're surrounded by the lakes. But it was a nightmare, and we no longer go up for Christmas anymore. Oh, Bobby got the membership. Bobby's a member. Him and his clone news. All right, we'll get back to it. So this is Crystal Falls that they're talking about.
Is there such a place? More than 500 miles to the north, across the big bridge, out past Iron Mountain, so far away it's even in a different time zone. On a mountain that faces the morning sun stands Crystal Falls and its people.
In fact, somebody asked my dad how steep the mountains were. He said their mountains were so steep you had to hold the goats up by the hind legs so they could eat.
I hunt, do a lot of ice fishing, and quite a bit of trapping when the prices are good.
I think maybe we work a little bit harder here
for the same amount of money. If you did make the same amount, you'd have to work much harder here.
Some days I miss very much going to museums, concerts and plays and things, but I think basically I feel very positively about living here in a small town in the Upper Peninsula.
Why come to Crystal Falls? Well, it's a long way from anywhere, so people choose to live here, as their fathers did before them, coming from Finland, Sweden, Italy, and Germany, to work in the mines, to cut logs in the woods, to hunt, and to fish. Fewer than 2,000 people live in this town today, and more than half of them are retired. Still, there's vitality here, a kind of quiet satisfaction, and especially character.
The main street of Crystal Falls is Superior Avenue. There's a bakery there that boasts the creamiest eclairs for 100 miles, a drugstore, a VFW post, and a half dozen taverns. There's a weekly newspaper called the Diamond Drill, but the daily news is freshest in a barbershop called Bud's.
I came here to get a haircut once in a while. But mostly I stop in here to get the news, where the fish are biting, where they get the deer, everything else, where the partridge are. He's better than a newspaper because we can come in here daily and get the news right on the spot.
Shoot the breeze a little bit. You hear all kinds of stories in here. You hear everything here, you know. Everything.
I don't say much. I'm a kind of a listener.
I see. The secret here may just be to sit and listen.
Yeah, really. And then I find out from both parties where the birds are. See?
You asked what we do here for excitement and pastime. Well, we do here what the people down the city save money up all year to come up here, spend a week's vacation. We do it all year.
I lived in Flint, and the things I like to do, you just can't do in Flint. I'm not much for bowling or anything, and I enjoy the outdoors, so why not? At least when I in this type of work, you don't get a lot of time off, so when you get a little time off, I'm here where it's at.
The courthouse sits at the head of Superior Avenue, a crown atop Crystal Falls, with polished pillars and rough stone arches dug from nearby quarries. Crystal Falls has been the seat of Iron County since 1889, but none of this would be here if it hadn't been for a poker game and a whole lot of whiskey.
What happened was many years ago, the courthouse used to be in Iron River. And many years ago, I guess during a poker party or something, they got the other ones drunk, and then they snuck over to Iron River and they stole all the records from Iron River and brought them over to Crystal Falls, and that's the true story. And all the county seat is in Crystal Falls, and there's bitterness, and they won't let anybody forget about it.
Sheriff Harold Gill is a native son of rural Amasa, and he enforces the law on the roads and highways of Iron County.
Unemployment has a big reason for being in jail. A lot of them, but the larcenies I was talking about is they try to steal stuff so that hoping they can sell it and make money to live on.
Yet some of the worst troublemakers in Iron County have four legs.
In the fall of the year and in the spring of the year, it's terrible. It's I think last year we had around 80 some car deer accidents.
In Crystal Falls, people look upon the mayor as a person that they can go to, call up when they have problems.
Lawrence Hegstrom teaches 5th and 6th grade social studies at the local school, but part of the time he's mayor, a victor in every city election since 1968.
I'm related to a whole lot of people in town. So when someone asks me, how come you've been the mayor so long? I just tell them, when you're related to that many people, who would dare run against you? They know they don't have a chance before they start. would say here that basically we're quite friendly, hardworking to a certain degree, still have pretty strong family ties, real strong family ties, love the area, and basically don't want to ever leave it.
Dad came over in 1913, and he took the shop over. In 1922, he sent for my mother, and she came over. They got married here in town. He worked till he was 76. He worked, as a matter of fact, the night he died, he was up to camp, monkeying around with oil drums, and came home and died right here in the shop.
Emil Beechigo has been fixing shoes since he was 10 years old. His shop is just the same as when his father worked here, but the town around it has changed.
There was buildings next door, buildings across the street. Of course, where that big mountains is down there used to be a skating rink. Oh, that's a lot different. Mostly all retired people here now, People you don't even know. They moved up from the city, they come to a small town and retire.
Spotty. Spotty, that was the one I got him from Smite, Fred Smite from Kingsford. You remember that Spotty? That was a good dog. And then when I left here, that was around in the middle 30s or around there. And then I give him to a neighbor to keep, and then I guess a car killed him. But that was a real good little dog.
Tuffy Dalpra's favorite rabbit dog, remembered as keenly as famous woodsmen and hunters of the past. Born 79 years ago, Tuffy was a printer's devil by age 13 and carried ladles of whiskey to the loggers who rode the big rafts through town.
Then those logs, when they went down the river, they were going this way here. And them fellas were jumping there and poking them with them long peavies, they called them. Them fellas had to jump from one log to another to keep them logs moving so they didn't jam up. And if they ever fell in there and them logs come together, I never heard of anybody drowning, but that was that they had to watch themselves because them logs, when they're going down the river, they're going back and forth this way here.
When Tuffy Dalpra was a boy, Crystal Falls was a boom town. Big hotels on Superior Avenue, an opera house, and count 'em, 32 saloons. Logging built Crystal Falls, but mining made the town rich.
Very true.
The name of the county is Iron. The next township over is Hematite. The roads are named Rock Crusher and Bristol Mine. Iron ore almost jutted out of the ground
26.
here. Beginning in the 1880s, men went down into the mines to follow the tributaries of the Menominee Range, one of the 5 great rivers of iron in the northern Great Lakes region. For most of a century, every household in Crystal Falls knew a miner, or a dead miner.
There was nothing else to pick from around here them days. That was the easiest place to get a job. But they were hiring them every day. They were hiring men. And men at them days were worthless. So they tell you come around tomorrow, maybe somebody get killed today.
Did you ever get a job like that?
Oh yes, you were killing them every week.
As recently as 1969, men went down into the Bristol mines searching for the red ore called iron. 2 shifts provided jobs for more than 600 men within walking distance of downtown Crystal Falls. Today, the shafts are filled with cement, the sheds are rusting in the snow, and the mines are closed forever.
With the disappearance of the mines, at one time, a lot of your kids that graduated from high school went directly into the mines because they were good paying jobs, good fringe benefits, and that's gone now.
It's a low grade ore that we have here, and they're getting better grade ore from overseas, and they just can't compete, so they're done.
But the trees still grow and fall. The forests are the farms of the North Country, and winter is harvest time. Even with 8 inches of fresh snow on the ground, even with the temperature at 4 degrees above zero, the workday began at dawn for Bob Wolosinski and Jim Funk. Wolosinski is 43. He cut his first tree when he was 12, coming into the woods with his dad, skidding logs with horses. Now he topples great trees in minutes. His saw needs a gallon of oil every day just to cool the working chain. Funk pulls the logs and poles from the woods with a modern lumberjack's mechanical horse, a skidder, $67,000 of articulated power.
A tree like this is what we normally call a widowmaker because of that dead cedar hanging in there. It's probably tied into the branches, so when you cut the hemlock down, the cedar has a good chance of coming down and falling on you.
So what are you going to do then?
Well, I'm going to cut it down fast and run.
I'm going to cut it fast and move. What the hell do you think I'm going to do?
Later.
Trucks weighing more than 60 tons rumble through the woods on roads of ice and packed snow. Loggers get paid by the pound for pulp. Every load is carefully weighed before the logs head to
God,
the
loggers
chipper
fuck up the
to
trails
make
so
paper
bad,
and
though.
tissue.
So bad.
And tomorrow,
The logger's day ends in a local tavern where the tools of their fathers hang on the walls. A place where you can get beer and brandy and change for $1.
you're out there, you're free, you know. You can, if you want to stop and have a cigarette, or if you want to stop and have coffee, nobody's going to tell you, hey, get back to work, you know, because we get paid for what we do.
I worked in factories. And there it depends on how long you've been in the union. Who's got the seniority? The young guy, he does the work. The old guy, he gets more pay.
You can go out there and sit on a machine all day, and you're still going to get your $14 an hour. The machine breaks down, you're still going to get paid all day. That's the way most of your unions operate.
But logging is different.
Logging is definitely different. If you don't get that wood out there, you don't get your paycheck. Simple as that.
Well, when I first started, till I got the proper clothes, there was a couple mornings there I thought I had to be crazy. It gets cold out there. I don't care what they say.
The skidder starts, we work. That's the way that was our rule. The skidder starts, we work.
Funk's specialty is heavy machinery repair. Wolosinski is in the excavating business during the summer. The jobs change with the seasons.
We're kind of versatile. That's one thing about the UP. You have to be kind of versatile if you want to survive. You can't just depend on one thing.
All right. I feel like that's a good place to stop it because then they talk about different stuff like rabbit hunting and stuff like that. So, but that's kind of life in the UP, and it's the same way today. it hasn't changed much. But between the timber, between the iron ore, and a little bit later copper, there was a lot of economic opportunity in that area. A lot of economic opportunity in the area. It's interesting. It's very interesting to see what kind of things take place like that in areas that we don't know, you know. And that led to what I call the Michigan meat pie, because I think pasty sounds funny. Oops, I switched. There's the pasty. So it's basically a bunch of shit meat. Stop. I don't want to subscribe. It's a bunch of shit meat and potatoes, carrots, gravy, and a shell, and that was basically their food. Is kind of just kind of wrap it all up. And now, if you're ever in the UP, you got to eat a pasty. I'm not a fan of them, but a lot of people like them. There are some good ones. Just it's not my favorite thing. No, it's never gonna change up there unless somebody does something drastic. But they like it. It's a lot slower. It's a lot calmer. Handheld pot pie. Yep. Pasties. They're everything you need. They're just throwing the pasty, like they made them in bulk, and that's what the loggers and the miners and everybody ate. So, just really neat. And again, this sets the stage for Detroit, because you could get it to the steel manufacturing, and then they could move the steel back to Detroit by the water and build cars. So it was instrumental in Detroit growing, so economically. Hot dish is non-negotiable. You have to bring a hot dish to potluck. Yeah. But anyways, so we'll go back down to the mainland, the city. And so we have some changes that are taking place. 1846, Michigan becomes the first to abolish capital punishment. So very early, Michigan abolished capital punishment. 1848, the state capital moves from Detroit, Michigan to Lansing, Michigan, where it still resides today. So they moved it, picked it up and drug it to Lansing. So yeah, it was interesting. There's a town on the way where they stopped overnight that was, what the hell's the town's name? It's a small town in mid-Michigan. Michigan capital city for a day. Chi-Town. That's what I thought it was. So Shiawassee Township. It's also called Chi-Town. It's in mid-Michigan. Kind of by Durand, Michigan. So when they were moving it, they had to stop overnight, and they stopped in Chi-Town. And Chi-Town, a tiny little town, became the unofficial state capital for one day. So, just in 1837, it became the state capital. So they still have a plaque and all that kind of stuff up. Kind of cool. But then in 1848, also the first telegraph message is transmitted between Detroit and Buffalo. So yet another first from Detroit. Excomer's family moved in. I think this is Excomer on the right, the far right here. At least that's what I tell myself when I go to bed at night. That's definitely Excomer on the far right with the mustache and the, yep. 1849, Scandinavian immigrants arrive in Michigan. Many settle in the Upper Peninsula, but some work in Detroit as tool makers. They were the only people crazy enough to go into that shitty weather. That was kind of ridiculous. It was cold. I assume it's much like the Finns, Swedes, Norway type deals. But yeah, and some of them stayed in Detroit and made tools for different industries. And the Finns, yeah. So yeah, again, another group of immigrants that came in. Shitty weather looked just fine. It's shitty for me. I'm a simple person. I just want to drive to my location and not have it take 2 hours. I think Finland's Scandinavian. Yeah, it's in the little bunch of them up there. You're Scandinavian, aren't you? I don't know. Maybe I made a mistake there, but maybe Finns aren't Scandinavian. But I thought Finland was part of Scandinavian, like the Scandinavian area. But yeah, see, from one, he said yeah. Also in 1849, September 25th, the first annual Michigan State Fair is held in Detroit. The Michigan State Fair is pretty cool. They usually have some pretty cool bands. That's my limited interaction with the state fair. I'm not a FFA or 4-H type person, never was. But they do a lot of that kind of stuff. There's obviously the rides and stuff like that, but the concerts was always great. You get a lot of Detroit artists. I saw Alice Cooper there a few times. And it's relatively small. It's an intimate kind of area to see a show. That's my involvement in the state fair, but it's pretty cool. I think they've since moved the state fair. It's been a while. So the Yooper accent is a mix of Finnish, Irish, and English. It's very weird to hear in person. Yes, it is. It is. It's got some very high, I'm trying to figure out a way to explain it, but I don't know that we can. There's actually a band called Yoopers. They're pretty fucking hilarious. Trying to. I have to find a song because now I brought it up, and now I need to. Hang on, I'm gonna look for one. They so signify the Yooper accent, like hardcore. I'm just trying to find a good one. Do you have a favorite Yooper song, AP? I know you know who the hell the Yoopers are. Yeah, that's what I was gonna do too. So, let me bring it up real quick. Okay, so this is the Yoopers, and it explains the accent. It's the best way to explain the accent. Oh,
gosh darn humidity, and then you know that when you sit there in the bed and you're just sweaty, and you go to reach for the water on the nightstand and you slide right out of bed, and the wife says, "Stop making so much noise! You're waking me up. Go to
His
sleep."
best song, Fredbear.
Yeah, let me tell you. Yeah. Times like that make me think about moving up north. Good idea. Yeah, I'd do it too. Of course, then I couldn't watch the Packers. The Packers are. Gosh, I like the Packers. I'd do anything for the Packers. Who can forget Vince Lombardi, back in the glory years? Not me, boy. Well, anyhow, getting to be that time of year, eh? Yeah. Horses eat it. Yeah, I'm a deer hunter. How do you do? I got the deer hunting rapping tale for you.
You can't explain it.
I'm so
It's weird.
excited. It's my favorite time of year. I love to feast my buns, chasing trophy deer. But don't clap your hands to the stomping of the feet, cause yeah, he's like me. He can't keep a steady beat. No.
Come on, I guess get with the beat.
Okay, so I don't want to get more than 400 strikes on this video, but yeah, that's kind of it's hard to explain, but yeah, it's interesting, very interesting. You just kind of get used to it. So, but yeah, sounds like what people think Canadians sound like. Exactly. So we took a huge advantage of the water. In 1850, shipping becomes Detroit's biggest industry. As I saw last week, there's the postal ship, the J.W. Westcott. Shipping is a huge economic driver for the area. It isn't as much as I think it should be anymore, but it's still pretty prevalent on the Detroit River and stuff like that. Also in 1850, the United States Census reports that Detroit's population is now at 21,000 people, and that will start growing rapidly when industrialization comes. Can't talk about Detroit unless you're talking about Stroh's beer. All my uncles would only drink Stroh's. That's it. I don't know if anybody's ever had Stroh's. Don't. It's not the best tasting, but very much so. 1850, Bernard Stroh founds the Stroh's Brewery Company following a family tradition he learned as a boy in Germany. Oh yeah, shipping and logging were instrumental towards the growth of the state and the city of Detroit. So, and we'll watch a little video on Stroh's, too, as well. But 1851, Detroit's population reaches 26,000, has 600 brick and 4,000 wooden buildings. Gross. It's kind of in the same old Milwaukee kind of category, but so this is a shorter one, 5 minutes, but interesting.
When you go out with your friends, do you ever drink beer?
Pop,
Come
please.
on, son, be honest with me. Do you drink beer?
Of course
Yes.
I drink beer, Pop. I'm 29 years old.
If you're of a certain age and you lived in Detroit, you know about America's only fire brewed beer.
Pop, listen to me. I drink Stroh's. Honest.
Son, your mother and I, we only want what's best for you.
Hey, Caesar, what's with this fire brewing business?
I don't know, man. Wait a minute. Hey, Sam. Huh? Fire brew, what is it?
Hey, Nick! You drink Stroh's? Fire brewing! What is it? What?
I'm not doing this because Stroh's is America's only fire brewed beer. What do I know from fire brewing?
Their beer was not made in electric kettles. It had a flame underneath it, man, and that made it special.
And I'm not doing it because
According to Stroh's, fire brewing mellowed the beer, made it smoother.
I'm doing it because I love the taste. And besides, I'm getting a lot of bread to admit it.
It dates all the way back to 1909 when Julius Stroh was touring breweries in Germany.
So we tasted and tested and compared.
The styles of beer that he liked particularly turned out to be fire brewed. They were brewed in kettles heated with a direct flame.
The Stroh family had already been making beer in Detroit for half a century when the fire brewing process started.
So my great-great-grandfather arrived here with $200 in 1849. Well, that was enough to get started.
Bernard Stroh came with a wave of Germans to the Midwest, political refugees of the German Revolution of 1848.
Bernard started the business in 1850, just east of downtown Detroit, off Gratiot Avenue. By the 1860s, he built a great big new brewery, and he was the largest brewer in Michigan by then.
When Prohibition hit
I honestly
Michigan
don't
in
know.
1917, Stroh's actually survived by making other things.
We made soda pop, ginger ale. We had our own line of orange soda, cola, all sorts of things. And then ice cream.
Stroh's made a malt extract, supposedly for cooking and as a nutritional supplement.
4.5%, Biden.
Well, we all know it was really for people who wanted to make their own illegal brew in the basement. Few brewers actually survived Prohibition, the Depression, and then the war after that, but the post-war boom was really pretty good to those who did.
Pfeiffer got very big. Goebel got very big. Altus got very big.
By the late 1950s, the big brand in Detroit was Goebel, Joe Bell to some.
That was the spoof on it. Pabst Blue Ribbon were PBRs, and that was called Joe Bell.
Joe Bell. I've heard of J.C. Penney, but not Joe Bell.
It's football once again with Goebel 22.
How's this?
Hang on, it's really cheap beer. So a 30-pack of 12-ounce cans is $18.99. So, hell yeah. So $18.99 for a 30-pack. It was the first beer I ever drank. I was, of course, 21 minus 9. 8. First beer I ever drank.
Yes, Van Patrick was at the mic for Goebel when the Detroit Lions won their last NFL
Holy
championship
shit.
back in 1957.
Lions 28, Chicago 10.
Back then, Van Patrick was also the voice of the Detroit Tigers.
And one of his famous expressions, here's the pitch. It's a long one, oh, it's foul by a Goebel beer case.
When Stroh's became the official beer of the Tigers, Van Patrick was suddenly out, replaced by an announcer from Baltimore, some guy named Ernie Harwell. The great brewery strike of 1958 hurt the Detroit beer business so badly it really never recovered. Beer from St. Louis and Milwaukee suddenly moved right in.
Pabst became the biggest selling brand in Michigan as a consequence of that strike. In order for us to grow, we had to expand outside Michigan.
Goebel went bankrupt. Acquired by Stroh's, Pfeiffer moved out of state while Stroh's hired New York ad man Bill Bernbach. Bernbach had created the iconic Volkswagen Beetle campaign, Think Small. But in the late 60s, Stroh's was thinking big.
Stroh's brings you this 8-pack to
Oh,
remind
that's
you
really
how fast
cool.
our beer disappears.
The advertising worked.
Oh, Yank, what about some of that Stroh's beer, what you've been talking about?
Stroh's quickly became a national brand, buying other beers and breweries along the way.
Pick it up, mate. We don't want the blokes to know we've been here.
But the costs, they were just too high. The Stroh Brewery on Gratiot shut down in 1985.
So here's a toast.
The first era of Detroit-made beer had come to a close.
From one beer lover to another, Stroh's.
But just because that one closed, they still continue to make it in all the way through. It's been closed and opened a few times, but Stroh's is an absolute staple of Detroit history. It's bad beer. I mean, it's not great beer, but it's bad beer. But a lot of people liked it. A lot of Detroiters liked it. Yeah. So that is another iconic staple of a footnote of the city of Detroit. So continuing on. In the business we call this foreshadowing. 1853, George B. Russell begins building railroad cars under the business name Detroit Car and Manufacturing. That's awesome. That's awesome. 1854, the first rail connection between Detroit and New York City is completed. So again, you're starting to see a lot of manufacturing. You're starting to see, and that will foreshadow some of the things that come in the future. I'm sure you know about them, but we'll talk about it when it gets here. So that brings us to another shipping development, another economic development, and another development that led to the city and many of the things that were important for the city. One of them, we talked about it last week, and it said it was coming up. And this is kind of one of the last bigger events. We have a couple after this, but this is kind of an important part as well. So 1855, the Sioux locks, the locks at Sault Ste. Marie are finished. They enable ships to bring iron and copper ore to Detroit entirely by ship. And as I've talked about before, the elevations drop dramatically. So on the right side of this is the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of St. Lawrence Seaway. These are all the different places where it drops, all the different dams. This is Niagara Falls right here in the middle. Oh shit, I forgot I don't have a cursor. So the Niagara Falls is right there in the middle between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Huron and Michigan are the same height, but then you have quite a change in elevation when it Lake Superior, which is not a lake, it's basically an ocean, but Lake Superior has a depth at its deepest of 1,333 feet or 406 meters, and it's huge. So sea level is obviously 0 feet, and the elevation of Lake Superior is 601 feet. So there's 600 feet in that relatively short distance from Lake Superior to the Atlantic Ocean. So, oh yeah, I forget you're on the north side of it. So this, if you look just to the right of Lake Superior, you see this little footnote that says Sioux locks compensating works at Sault Ste. Marie. So that's the lock that drops you down, kind of. And well, I should do this the other way, but I'm not going to. So you're just gonna have to deal with it. Why do you hate me right now? Give me 1 second. So Sioux locks is another thing that if you are ever in northern Michigan, you should probably take the opportunity to go visit because it's really fucking cool. And I'm just making sure that in this group of pictures, there's none of me or my penis. Because both are a huge possibility and we know this. So I don't want to understand why anybody's surprised that I would preview it. So these are from the last time that I was at Sioux locks. And we did the boat tour. Literally our greatest source of pride. Just don't tell anyone Lake Superior is technically the second biggest lake. St. Michigan and Huron are one lake. But they're not. They're not. They're two distinctly different things. So this is the boat tour that you can take in. It's called the Sioux locks tour, and you'll see it in a moment. So this is the power station in Sault Ste. Marie. So it's a big hydropower plant. There's one of the Great Lakes freighters. Just big boats. Obviously not as big as ocean liners, but called more of the power plant. There's just some random asshole in his boat. So this is what the Sioux locks boat tours look like. They're just little boats. And you ride them through and take a tour of the locks and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. It's worth doing if you're up that way. That's true. That's true. They are two different lakes. So this is the lowly Canadian lock. This is where a lot of the pleasure cruises and, not huge boats go to. This is Canadian side right here, and literally the water comes in. Then they pump it up to raise the boat, and then it's to the level of the next lake that you're going into. So this is what it kind of looks like, and it raises the water level. And then to go the other way, it pumps it out of the lock. So then you're at the same level as the other lake. I know, but they're wrong. They're wrong. So this is still the Canadian side. Or the Canadian side. You can see the pot leaf flag. I mean the maple leaf flag right there. This is the American side. So this is the Blue Water Bridge, right? No, Ambassador Bridge. Ambassador Bridge. I forget. So this is the Bridge Canada. And this is the American side where the bigger boats come into. And it's a bigger... Nope. Maybe we're still on the Canadian side. But that looks like the American side. No, maybe we're on the Canadian side. But... Oh, it is still. So you can see from here the difference in level of the water. So we have a very, very little amount. Just look at the walls here. And then this is when we first got into the lock, when the doors open. So you're going up a considerable distance. If we're looking at the water line, it's all the way to the top of this kind of corrugated area. So they're pumping that much water in to raise the boat up so that it can take the whole, so it can get to the next level of water. So that's what I thought. So yeah, that's the difference. That's how much water gets pumped in. There's a big boat. There's under the bridge. There's the train bridge, which is really cool. Train bridge goes up and down to allow boats to pass. There's the train bridge and the car bridge. And so this is lowering the water level so you can get to the level of Lake Huron. So there's another Canadian flag. I guess I don't have any American pictures. But so that's kind of what we're looking at with the locks. So cool. Yeah, I think we went last summer or 2 summers ago. Just because we hadn't been there. Like the kids haven't been there. So like, shit, we gotta do it again. And it was neat. It was neat to do again. True statement if we're talking about the same Sault Ste. Marie. But now we'll go into. So this is the American side, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. So this is the American side, and there's a couple different locks there. They have this big visitor center, so you can see the operation of the boats. Here's a 360 video of the American side of the locks, but I don't know that it's... Oh, I didn't like this one. That's why I didn't do it. But they have a place that you can visit. Sioux locks are 100% gravity fed and require no pumps. So the water comes in, fills up, and then goes out the other side. It's just closing of the doors. Pole lock requires 22 million gallons of water. During repairs, the locks are closed from January 15th to March 25th each year. The bedrock beneath the locks is 1,000 feet thick and made from reddish sandstone. It would take 584 train cars to move 70,000 tons of cargo, or one 1,000-foot freighter. Tagertha is the largest freighter that uses the pole lock. It measures 1,013 feet, 13.5 feet, and 105 feet inches wide. Excuse me. So yeah, those are the boats that come in and out of it, and it's again instrumental to Detroit and our economy. So this is a video from the Army Corps of Engineers about the locks, and I thought this one was cool as shit. So we'll watch this one too. St. Mary Falls.
The Great Lakes of North America, the largest concentration of fresh water in the world. And the largest of these lakes, Lake Superior, emptying
Which
its
looks like a
overflow
wolf.
at only one spot. This spot has historically drawn people from around the world. The original people, Algonquin-speaking tribes of the Upper Great Lakes, call this spot Baoteng, the rushing waters. This spillway from Gitchigumi, or the Great Lake, was carved out by massive glaciers over 10,000 years ago. Over a mile long and some 3,000 feet wide, these rushing rapids were home to an abundance of tasty white fish.
Is this the same guy that does the bridge message, AP? You know what I'm talking about. It sounds exactly like him.
Easily scooped up with nets from canoes. This spot became a natural trading point for French explorers in the early 1600s, followed by French Jesuit missionaries and fur trappers. The falls came to be known as Les Sous de Sainte Marie, or the Falls of St. Mary. Father Jacques Marquette christened the falls and surrounding area in 1668 when he established a Catholic mission and settlement on the southern shore. Sault Ste. Marie became the first non-Indian settlement in the Upper Great Lakes. It was the site chosen by Sieur du Saint-Lusson to claim North America west of Montreal for King Louis XIV of France in 1671. The French controlled the Great Lakes fur trade through the mid-1700s. Then activity by the British with a fort at Hudson's Bay prompted the French to build their own fort under the direction of Chevalier de Repentigny in 1751 at the Sault. The fort, built on the southern shore below the rapids, was abandoned during the French and Indian Wars that followed. At the end of that war, the French surrendered to the British, and the English set up the fur trade at the Sault by establishing the Northwest Fur Company. They were first to make use of water power at the Sault for sawmills. They also dug a canal and built the first set of locks for canoes on the northern shore of the rapids. The locks were 30 feet long and 8 feet 9 inches wide, each with a lift of 9 feet. One of these locks has been partially restored and may be seen today in front of the St. Mary's Paper Company offices in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Even though the British were defeated in the War of Independence, they still retained western outposts to continue fur trading. It wasn't until the War of 1812 that control of the Upper Great Lakes finally resulted in a joint U.S.-Canadian ownership. An agreement with England established a boundary down the middle of the Falls of St. Mary. Even though the national boundary separated the shoreline, Sault Ste. Marie continued to be the name for all the geographic region around the falls. In 1822, Colonel Hugh Brady was sent to build a U.S. Army fort at Sault Ste. Marie. With the troops' arrival, the permanent population of the Sioux in Michigan Territory consisted of 152 non-native people and a seasonal settlement of several hundred, mostly native and Ojibwe or Chippewa. In the 1830s and 40s, the rapids still provided the chief source of income for the area. People were employed to portage or haul ships around the rapids by pulling them over what is now Portage Street on a grease log pathway. This process took from 6 weeks to 3 months, depending upon the size of the ships. Most of the ships, however, chose the easier method of transferring their cargoes of lumber, copper, and iron ore to wagons or rail cars that took them to waiting ships on the other side of the falls. In 1836, a treaty between the Ottawa and Chippewa and the U.S. government cleared the way for Michigan to become a state in 1837. As more copper and iron ore were discovered and mined in the western UP, the demand for these products grew. To ship these resources out, a lock system would have to be built at the Sault. As an incentive for construction, the U.S. Congress granted Michigan a right-of-way and 750,000 acres of land awarded to the successful contractor. Charles T. Harvey was sent by the Fairbanks Scale Company to survey mineral resources in the upper lakes, and he urged his employers to apply. The contract was signed, and Harvey was put in charge of the project. From 1853 to 1855, a construction of enormous proportions for its time was undertaken to build a set of 2 locks. A labor force of up to 1,600 men fought cholera and harsh weather to meet construction deadlines. On June 18, 1855, a canal more than a mile long with 2 locks in tandem was completed. Each lock was 350 feet long, 70 feet wide, and 13 feet deep. The gates had holes that opened which let water in and out. Then the gates were swung open for ship passage. All of this was operated by hand. The final cost of construction was just less than $1 million, and a toll was imposed of 4 cents a ton to recover the cost of construction and operation. Getting to the locks and the iron mines beyond required sailing first up the St. Mary's River. The St. Mary's is comprised of a number of lakes connected by narrower streams, many of which had rapids. Both lakes and streams are also separated by numerous islands. This allowed for several possible routes through which smaller vessels could go. But as larger lake freighters came carrying more cargo, dredging a channel in the river became necessary. In 1857, the first dredging work was contracted through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. At first, the sailing ships had to take a route north around Sugar Island through Lake George, but traveling through Lake Nicolet and the Middle Nebish Channel proved a better direction, so future dredging was concentrated there. By 1869, 1/3 of all the iron ore and 2/3 of all the copper produced in the United States came from mines on the shores of Lake Superior. These shipments had a direct bearing on the success of the North in the Civil War. Because the size and number of ships increased, the state lock became inadequate, and a new lock was proposed. But the state of Michigan could not afford the construction, so the federal government undertook the financing. Major Orlando Poe was the first Army Corps of Engineer officer to work on the locks. He was 38 when assigned to begin work on the second canal. The contract was awarded in 1870, and he remained in charge of improvements until 1872. Poe then joined the staff of General William Sherman, whom he had served with in the Civil War, and General Godfrey Weitzel was appointed to take over construction. This new lock, south of the state lock, would be 515 feet long and 80 feet wide, and it would have a new feature providing for taking in and discharging water under the floor. 8-foot square wood-lined culverts passed under the gates. Water came in and out of the chamber through 58 portholes in the wooden floor. Hydraulic power was used to operate the culvert valves and wooden lock gates. This enabled the new lock to be open around the clock, whereas the state lock could only operate during daylight. This new lock was 6.5 feet deeper and 10 feet wider than the state lock. A curved southern pier was also added, originally thought necessary to deflect ice, but in reality proved to be an obstruction and was eventually replaced with a straight lock design. In 1881, the lock was completed and called the Weitzel in honor of General Godfrey Weitzel. Then title to both the locks passed to the U.S. government, and they were placed under the jurisdiction
The
of the
whitefish
U.S.
is
Army
so
Corps of
good up there,
Engineers.
and I'm not a fan of
The Corps
fish.
has
But
operated the locks toll-free since that time. The troops at Fort Brady were then given the job of protecting the locks. The fort on the river was moved to the hill just south of the locks in 1898. The fort closed in 1944, and the facility became what is now Lake Superior State University. With the activation of the Weitzel lock, plans were already underway to replace the aging state lock. The cargo ships of the time were mostly double-masted brigs. Many added steam-powered paddle wheels to increase their speed, but soon the screw propeller would be the main means of propulsion. With more and bigger ships on the lakes, the next lock would have to be even bigger. 800 feet long, 100 feet wide, and 16 feet deep. It was designed to lock 4 of the largest freighters through at a single time. General Orlando Poe returned to oversee construction, succeeding General Weitzel in 1883. This new lock would be named after him. The Poe lock was built on the site of the original state lock. It would have 5 sets of gates weighing a total of 2.5 million pounds constructed out of steel. The Poe lock filled and emptied the same way the Weitzel did through culverts under the gates, except that 214 portholes were placed in the lock floor to allow for quicker entry and release of water. A pumping plant was also located in the basement of the new powerhouse and office building. This building currently houses the lock administrative offices. The valves for filling and emptying the
Still
locks,
there.
plus the gates and machines to swing them, were all driven by hydraulic pressure furnished by steam-operated engines. During the mid-1880s, a new energy source burst onto the scene called electricity. And in 1884, electric lights replaced kerosene lights at the locks. Operation of the locks was then run in 2 12-hour shifts with 16 people employed on each shift. In 1885, some 60 acres were added to the grounds and a fountain and basin were constructed to make the area between the street and the machine house more attractive. Adding to the industrial boom of the era, 3 railroad lines joined at both Saults, so a bridge was needed to cross the rapids and Locks Canal. In 1887, the bridge was completed with a special turret-style track that swung to the side when ships needed to go through the canal. From 1888 to 1892, what became the Edison Sioux Electric Company was experimenting with hydroelectric generation from a powerhouse in the rapids. They began to supply electric service to Sault Ste. Marie and the locks in 1892. Meanwhile, the Canadians were busy on their side of the river, completing a lock of their own in 1895. Then, after nearly 9 years of construction, the Poe Lock was opened for navigation in August of 1896.
That's the Poe
Part of that
Lock,
construction
not the Poe
also
Lock.
included some of the current buildings now standing next to the locks. With the
it's
Weitzel, Poe,
terrible
and
up there.
Canadian locks all in operation and a high demand for iron ore, the shipping industry rapidly grew. Towns were growing as well all around the Great Lakes as people became the main cargo for some of the ship lines. The 1890s were a time of great industrial expansion on both sides of the river, but the greatest growth occurred in Sioux, Ontario, from an entrepreneur and industrialist from Maine, Francis H. Clerg. Under his direction, a power canal and hydroelectric generating company was constructed. Today, that has evolved into the Great Lakes Power Company of Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Clerg also founded the St. Mary's Paper Company, the Algoma Central Railway, Algoma Steel, and Algoma Marine, and what is currently the Edison Sioux Electric Company Power Canal and Hydroelectric Facility in Sioux, Michigan. The construction of that powerhouse became an engineering wonder of the world when it was completed in 1902 and is still the longest horizontal shaft hydroelectric plant in the world. 1902 was also the year that a joint agreement between the U.S. and Canada formed the basis for a Rivers and Harbors Act, and that gave control of all lands and buildings in the rapids to each respective government. This meant that the Edison Sioux hydroelectric plant in the rapids would be turned over to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. However, Edison Sioux was allowed to buy back the excess power not needed to run the locks to continue servicing Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. The river was getting plenty of ship traffic at the time, and further dredging operations were undertaken at Lake Nicolet and in the Nebish Channel. The river bottom had to be deepened and widened. A channel was blasted out of the limestone on the west side of Nebish Island. A dam was set at both ends and water was pumped out. After that, the rock was actually quarried instead of dredged. That channel is now the main downbound channel for shipping today. "1905 saw international attention focused on the locks as the 50-year celebration got underway. 40,000 spectators came to see a naval parade of ships and a military parade down Ashman Street. Vice President Fairbanks appeared on the Coast Guard revenue cutter Tuscarora, and Charles T. Harvey was the chief marshal of the military parade. Theodore Roosevelt was also among the dignitaries. Commemorations were sent from various parts of the world. These included an obelisk at Brady Park and a Japanese torii and kiosk near the public entrance to the locks. The legislators who attended the anniversary of 1905 got a first-hand look at the strategic importance of the locks and also saw that the facility was still too small to handle the increased shiploads of lumber, iron ore, coal, and grain that had begun to flow through the river system. So once again, it was time for additional lockage facilities at the Sioux. Responsibility for developing the plans fell on the new commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Davis. Colonel Davis believed that instead of expanding the existing locks, only one ship should go through at a time to prevent accidents, so another new lock would be needed to handle the volume. The River and Harbor Act of 1907 adopted the project and construction commenced. In 1906, Mr. Louis Sabin became General Superintendent of the canal. The Lake Carriers Association was still concerned because of delays among the wider ships. Even with the Canadian Canal in operation, they hoped for yet another canal to be built. Sabin recommended construction of a second long lock, 80 feet wide and 24 feet deep, and that was authorized in 1912. The new lock excavations were made with 70-ton steam shovels, and for the first time, the new lock gates would be opened and closed by steel cables, operated by electric winding machines. The Davis lock was operational in 1914, and the fourth lock, the Sabin, was completed in 1919. At a length of 1,350 feet each, these new locks were the longest in the world. Controlling the flow of lake waters during this time became an international issue. Therefore, an international joint commission was formed to rule on the concerns of joint waterway usage. A system of compensating gates completed in 1921 by Michigan power companies and the Canadian government provided a means of control. Today, these gates, visible from the International Bridge, help maintain lake levels for shipping and provide high water for hydroelectric generation. By the early 1900s, most of the lake freighters were being constructed out of steel. They were powered by steam engines fueled by coal. The ships were 500 to 600 feet long, 60 feet wide, and weighed 10,000 tons. One of these was called the Lewis W. Hill, owned by the producer's steamship line. It was renamed when it was sold, and today is called the SS Valley Camp in honor of the Valley Camp Coal Company in Pennsylvania.
There's still
the ship
a
is
Valley
now
Camp
open to
there,
the public
right
as
there.
a museum
That's
in
a cool
Sault Ste.
museum
Marie,
to go look
Michigan.
at.
With
If you're
4
ever out
locks
there.
in operation in the 1920s, the lock force at the Sioux grew to 116. Together with personnel at St. Clair Flats and the U.S. Corps of Engineers office in Detroit, this was becoming known as the Detroit District. During the peak years of the early 1900s, freight tonnage through the Sioux approached 100 million tons, and at this time the Corps concentrated on improving navigation at the Nebish Channels and Round Island, plus building additional pier space above the locks. In 1929, 92.6 million tons was locked through. But in October of that year, the stock market crashed, introducing the worst depression the country had ever known. Lake freight at the locks declined to only 20.4 million tons. President Herbert Hoover signed a new Rivers and Harbors Act to put people back to work, improving waterways, harbors, and flood control, and money was available once again to further deepen the downbound sections of the St. Mary's River. In 1939, World War II began in Europe, and the next year tonnage at the locks leaped to 89.8 million. In 1941, all records were broken with 110 million tons. The shipping season ended that year on December 14th, 1 week after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. With the increased likelihood of aerial bombardment, there was concern that one large caliber bomb could knock out the whole lock system. So the Sioux area soon became the most heavily guarded inland section of North America. There were 10,000 troops stationed here, anti-aircraft emplacements and machine guns, searchlights, and up to 50 barrage balloons were placed strategically throughout the city to prevent enemy aircraft from dive bombing the locks. During the war, 85% of the iron ore used in the manufacture of ships, tanks, and guns went through the Sioux locks. With the unprecedented demand for iron ore, Congress authorized another lock, this one to replace the Weitzel. Because of the urgent war needs, the contract stipulated that construction be completed in just over a year. So even though there were sub-zero temperatures during the winter of 42 and 43, construction never stopped. 200 heated and mixed and sheltered after placement and protected during curing. That lock was named the MacArthur after General Douglas MacArthur and was officially opened on schedule July 11, 1943. It had the same dimensions as the Poe lock beside it, 800 feet long and 80 feet wide, and both locks were connected to the same canal. After World War II, President Franklin Roosevelt signed the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1945, and one of the provisions of that law provided for the construction of a new, more efficient hydroelectric power plant in the rapids. Today, only a portion of the old plant still continues in operation. One vertical turbine provides electricity, combining its output with the new plant that went online in 1951. The first priority of the plants is to power the operating machinery at the locks, but through the historical agreement with Edison Sioux Electric Company, surplus power is sold and distributed to the communities throughout the eastern Upper Peninsula. After World War II, a new size of lake freighter was being built to carry nearly twice the cargo of the former vessels. They were close to 700 feet long and 70 feet wide. Now the thought was to replace the Poe lock with a much larger lock. But first, the St. Lawrence Seaway Act was signed by President Dwight D. Eisenhower to open up the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean. That would also require further deepening of the channels for the larger ocean-going vessels. The project involved 63 miles of the St. Mary's River. By the mid-1950s, 51% of the freight went through the MacArthur Lock, and special handling became necessary with some of the ships that exceeded 660 feet. Work was pushed to begin the 1,000-foot Poe lock in 1961. Under the direction of Cliff Awney, area engineer at the Sioux, construction was ready to proceed. However, discussion with ship owners revealed that they were planning to build ships well over 1,000 feet in length. So a new, longer lock design was approved in 1962, increasing the lock length to 1,200 feet with a 110-foot width. Transportation by car was a concern as well, and in November of 1962, the International Bridge was opened as a joint venture between the United States and Canada. Specifically designed structures were counterbalanced over the lock so that construction could continue and ship passage would not be interrupted. In 1964, the redesigned Poe lock project was awarded to a Canadian firm, McNamara Construction out of Toronto. They had considerable experience on the St. Lawrence Seaway and were the first foreign firm ever to be awarded an American lock contract. However, labor and supplies came from the United States. It was a unique project in that it was the first lock ever to be built between two existing locks. The construction and ship passage during this period began to draw record numbers of tourists, so a visitors information center was constructed and viewing stands were expanded. In 1967, the largest freighter on the lakes was the ill-fated Edmund Fitzgerald. At 730 feet long and 75 feet wide, it could carry more than 30,000 tons of taconite ore. But by 1972, it was outdistanced by the first 1,000-footer, the Stuart J. Court. At 105 feet wide, the Court was capable of carrying 55,000 tons. The new 1,000-foot vessels are also capable of maneuvering much better than the smaller bulk freighters. Bow and stern thrusters permit the new ships to turn on a central axis, and advanced radar makes steering more precise. By 1972, the Davis and Sabin locks were ending their useful economic lives, since they could only handle smaller vessels. Today, the Davis and Sabin are considered the ideal locations for a new super lock that may carry even larger classes of lake-going freighters. Since Captain Douglas arrived at Detroit in the spring of 1820, Army engineers have played an important part in the development of what was once America's frontier Northwest. The Detroit District's greatest achievements have been the construction and maintenance of channels connecting the upper Great Lakes, becoming a highway of commerce vital to the growth and economy of the nation. They built harbors, helped control the rivers, acted in time of war and emergency, and built one of the busiest locking systems in the world, the St. Mary's Falls Canal.
So that is the historic Sioux locks. Like I said, and a huge, huge boom for economics here in the city of Detroit, and for Michigan in general. I think it's a fascinating place. It's one of my, if you ever come to Michigan, one of those places that you certainly should visit. Just it's excuse me, so simplistic, but so just mind blowing how it all works. So. All right, so I'm going to try and we have a couple more things and then, but I know I'm already over my 2 hours and I like to stay within 2 hours, but we started early, so I feel like it's okay. 1855, Italian immigrants move into Detroit. They begin to arrive and they settle east on the east side of the city. So you get a lot of Italians. In 1857, Polish immigrants began arriving in Detroit in very large numbers. Speaking of a big Pollock, and in 1857 as well, March 6th, the Detroiter Lewis Cass, the guy pictured to the right, definitely not a Freemason with his hand in his jacket, becomes the United States Secretary of State. And then this is the end of the pre-industrial era. Or boom town, as they called it. So obviously next week we get into the industrial era. But March 12th, famed abolitionist John Brown and Frederick Douglass meet at the home of William Webb. Again, it was always a place where they stood up for kind of the racial inequity of the time. The Underground Railroad rights. We'll see that more as we get into the Civil War that's about to happen, and so on and so forth. So Detroit's population's exploded since the last time we checked. In 1860, it represented 45,619 people just in Detroit, so it's getting bigger. And 1860, the only high school in Detroit begins to accept female students. So again, when you're talking about progressive ideas, Detroit was the progressive idea. So a lot of things we were first or near the first. So that takes us all the way up through 1860 in the history of the greatest city on the face of the earth. We learned a lot about the economics and the development. It is very good food from the Polish. So we're starting to get into next week. We'll get into industrial Detroit. We'll get into a guy named Henry Ford. Some stuff to do with phones. Some railroad stuff. And some stuff you probably don't know. So next week we'll go probably 1860 to, I'd like to get all the way to 1900, but we'll have to see how much I can get in. Like I said, the times will get shorter as we go. I just try and get as much in as I can in that 2-hour block. So as always, I want to thank you all for watching and learning more about my hometown. I think it's a great place, and as you can see, there's just a ton of history here, a ton of different histories. So that's going to be it for me tonight. Catch me tomorrow, hopefully 7:45, 7:50, somewhere in that time frame, for launch of USS 52. Hey, no problem. And tomorrow we'll have the one day only Matthew Moore on to continue the Matthew Moore trial. Tuesday, I will be doing a brand new show with the great Digger 420. We're going to talk about William Cooper, a conspiracy theorist, quote unquote, and a guy that seemed to get a lot of things right. Thursday, we'll do News Roundup. Friday, as always, over for Family Game Night. And we'll do the whole week all over again. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend and a great week. And I will see you guys all very soon. Take care, everybody.
Detroit, Michigan. Oh, yeah. Detroit, Michigan. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Detroit, Michigan.